Hey everyone, welcome back to Tuesday Tea with me, Alicia, and my co-host Melissa. We are here today with Erin. We are so excited to have her. She is a colleague of one of our previous guests from last month, Jillian. And so we get some more wisdom from that beautiful therapy practice. And we're so excited to get her on today to talk a bit more about this idea of how we're integrating all of the really good stuff we've chatted about over the last couple months, but really integrating this idea of showing up in your authentic self in your relationships. I think it's a theme that's come up a lot of how to, it can be hard to do on our own, but it can get tricky when there's other personalities and needs and wants involved. So we're just going to dive a little further on what that kind of looks like, some practical tools to do so, and see what else the conversation gives us. So I'm going to pass it over to Erin to introduce herself, give a little background on her, and then we'll dive right in. So welcome.
Thank you both so much for having me. A little bit about me. Yes, I work with Jillian at RiseWell Therapy and Consultation, and we have one other wonderful therapist there too. I'm originally from New Jersey. I've lived in Chicago now. It'll be 10 years, so I'm becoming a Midwest girl, but I'm always an East Coast Jersey girl at heart. Hear it in some of my, how I say certain words. You'll hear that accent a little bit. I am a licensed clinical social worker, so went to school really focusing on, every people-centered and just strength-based, and having those people are in the forefront of our brains. So that's kind of where my mindset comes from. And I live here in Chicago with my husband and my 3-year-old son.
Amazing. Well, we've got 2 Chicago ladies in the house today. I love it. Melissa's also in Chicago. And I'm also an LCSW, so lots of overlap here. It's awesome. So I guess when you kind of hear this topic, the statement of showing up as your authentic self in relationships, what comes to mind? I know it can go a lot of directions, but where do you want to take us?
I think for me, the first thing that comes to my mind are boundaries. And within relationships, romantic relationships, familial relationships, work relationships, friends, kind of everywhere. And I think boundaries has been a bit of a buzzword over the last couple of years, especially in the therapy space, the wellness space. And I think for a lot of people that are kind of like millennial and younger, Gen Z, and I'm not even sure what the generation
Whatever the other generations are. I don't know either.
For us, it's a lot about learning about boundaries, and sometimes teaching people that are a little bit older than us that have never thought about boundaries. Like, what are boundaries? Why are they important? Why should we even go forward and acknowledge and want to follow through with them?
Yeah. So what do you, since there is so much hot takes out there about boundaries, like what might be a newer, fresh, or different perspective that you can add to the conversation that maybe you share with your clients, or that you've sort of thought about?
Well, when I talk with my clients a lot about boundaries, especially with parents, that seems to be the family, the caregiver space. That seems to be like the number one thing we talk about when we talk about boundaries and relationships. And for me, and I always tell my patients or clients, boundaries is probably one of the hardest things to create, to maintain, because you are telling someone that you love basically no. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I'm not comfortable with doing that. And maybe it's somebody that, especially a parent that have always done something with you, and now all of a sudden you're saying no, that it's just very hard for the other person. It's hard for us to put those boundaries in place. So I think in terms of anyone who wants to talk boundaries, thinking about boundaries, to give yourself a lot of grace, because boundaries are not easy. We would all be doing it if we could, easy peasy. Yeah. So it's a lot of grace, it's a lot of practice, it's a lot of consistency. because no one likes to be told no. My 3-year-old hates it. So, you know.
Yes. Yes. I know it's funny you said parents because on Jillian's episode we talked a little bit about this, and Melissa was sharing a bit about her recent boundaries with her parents that she was going through.
Yeah, when you said like it seems to come up a lot with parents, that obviously resonated with me very spiritually. But also, I'm wondering why that's the hard. Like, it does seem like that's one of the harder relationships to set boundaries with. And I don't know. I'm just like spitballing here, but I'm like wondering if it's because this is the longest relationship you've ever been in, and you have these systems that have already been set up over time that you didn't actually set up, right? But then all of a sudden you're maybe realizing some things are in misalignment, or you're realizing that maybe you don't have the same values that you were brought up with, right? So it sounds like great to like be like, yeah, set boundaries, but like you said, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. So I'm wondering from your perspective, or like what like small steps can we make to start to get more comfortable and like lean into the discomfort of setting those like even little micro boundaries, like maybe we just don't answer the phone every time they call. So I know that's like a small one, but I'm sure you have like tons that you offer to people, and I would love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, and just to kind of go back to one thing you said, because I think it's really important, is that, you know, when we are babies and as we're growing up, we don't have like any boundaries with our parents, whoever our caregivers are, because they're taking care of us, they're keeping us safe, they're teaching us all these things, and we are like totally enmeshed with them. And then as you get older, you're like, oh, I can be independent. Oh,
I can wipe my own ass, right? Like,
yeah. So even though I'm going through the I can do it myself phase right now, so it's starting. But,
I bet at 3, yeah.
How it works, but so I think I always use this as an example. There's like a power dynamic too between our parents or caregivers and us, and it's always kind of like this. And then as we get older, that dynamic starts to smaller, and then kind of midlife is when things kind of even out, and then it kind of starts going the other way, where our parents are getting older, they're going to need a little bit more help, maybe they don't understand anything, and then the child kind of gets that power dynamic up here. And like this process of even just going from here to here is, you're like Melissa, you were saying, like, oh, I maybe don't have those values that I don't love those values my parents taught me, or I don't agree with that, or have some people experience, I don't really like my parent, like I wouldn't choose them to be like a friend or somebody in my life, which also can be really hard. So I think that's where the discrepancy comes from, of like, how do we go from no boundaries as a child to wanting to build the boundaries as we get older, and then as a parent, I'm sure, going from being so enmeshed with your child to your child pushing you away in some little way, and like the phone thing, and then being like, oh my God, what do you mean you're not going to do this? Or what do you mean you don't want me to call you 50 times a day? So I think that's where some of it potentially could be coming from. But in terms of like little of the micro, I liked that boundary stuff. The phone is a great one. I'm an only child, and my family live here. They live in Jersey. So my mom used to call me at least once a day, every day. And then there were points where I was like,
No.
what do I say anymore? And that's just something I didn't want to do. So I started, instead of every day, I would pick up the phone every other day. And now it's like, especially now since I have a child that's kind of helped me, like, oh, I don't have time, I can't be on the phone. But then it was also not only not picking up the phone every day, it was letting her know, like, hey, I might not be able to pick up the phone every day. I might need to talk to my friend, or I might need to call so-and-so. So doesn't mean I don't want to talk to you, doesn't mean I don't love you, but I just might not have the same time as I used to.
Right.
And the thing with boundaries is the consistency piece. the person on the other end is going to push because that's what they're used to. So she still calls me probably almost every day, but I don't pick up, and I know
That's okay.
But if I pick up every day, she's going to keep doing it. So it's a lot
Right.
about consistency. So yeah, I think, like you were saying, Melissa, the phone thing, if it's, are there any examples of boundaries that you guys would like to hear, like a micro assistance with? Does that make sense?
I mean, any that you have, I think like you both have more experience with like what people are needing to set boundaries on more, or like what are the gateway boundaries, like to get into like the bigger boundaries. Yeah. So anything else you want to share or not, like, I think that's a great practical step that I think is like applicable in lots of areas of life.
Yeah.
I also, as you were talking, I was struck by like, I had a very, very similar experience with my mom, and I think that was one of the first boundaries I set with her. Like, she would do this thing where she calls and then would follow up with a text and like, or call twice because like, maybe I just didn't answer the first time, like I can't call back, and then follow up with like, hey, I called you. And
I know. I have caller ID.
I know. So two things. Number one is I had to realize, I think honestly, I had to go through this like, she's not out to get you. She's not purposely being annoying. And I think sometimes my first reaction can be like annoyance or going straight to like, and that's not fair either, especially if I haven't set the boundary, right? So I think sometimes in being your most authentic self and setting boundaries, you do have to also assume best intent of the other person when you can, and then set the boundary. So I said to her like, Mom, if I don't answer, it means that I'm not available to answer. When I can, I'll call you back. And she was kind of like, oh. And I have to remember too, like her life she's in a very different stage of life. Right. And sometimes that's quite frustrating because I'm sure you can both relate to this. It's like my mom's retired. So she's
always free. Yeah.
Besides,
the lady of leisure.
Totally. Besides the activities that she's doing and like,
right.
Like things that she's involved in, like, my life isn't slow. Like I'm not sitting around with like a plethora of free time. Like I'm a single mom. I have I have a full-time job that's like quite extreme and like lots of things, right? So I just have to like remind myself too of like I have to be realistic in my expectations of someone else's understanding because often, and not always, like there's some people that are just obviously not nice and like they don't have good intentions, but a lot, like with your parents, I think it's easy to assume that most of them just want to connect with you. And so how can I create spaces where we can connect so she can get what she needs, but how can I also honor that I don't have time to, like, I don't want to be on the call. I don't want to really even be on the phone. So like, when can I call her? When it's like, I have a finite amount of time. So maybe I'm traveling and I know I only have 15 minutes, but I can still give her that connection. But I'm setting that boundary of like, I can only talk for this time. So kind of what it was making me think of when you were talking about that.
And I really like the time, like start and end time piece of it. And I think that's great. Like, oh, I'm in the car. I only have 15 minutes. And then letting mom or whomever on the phone know like, hey, mom, driving to work. I have 15 minutes, or for me, since I work from home, I'm getting ready for work today. I have 20 minutes. Like, that's it. Are you around? Let's talk. So I think the finite times are really helpful. And there might be times like you're at the grocery store, you're walking around, you might want to talk to your mom or your dad or whomever, and like that's okay too. So I think having that communication with her, really important with anybody. And then I think sometimes, especially if you tend to be more people pleasing than not, having that feeling of like, oh, so-and-so called me or reached out or wanted to do something and I'm telling them no, I'm putting up the boundary and saying I'm not comfortable, and like it's like a kick in the heart. It's, to your point, also knowing, hey, like I'm doing this because I'm trying to get a better relationship with them. They're not mad at me. They're okay. I'm going to call them back. I'm going to go hang out with them on Saturday,
Right.
And knowing and just being able to sit in the discomfort is, I think, the second hardest part of having any boundary anywhere.
Yeah.
Something that
Yeah.
you, I don't want to say hurt someone, but maybe piss them off. They might be upset. Do they like me anymore? You know, some of
Yeah.
those intrusive, people pleasy, as they say, thoughts kind of can come in sometimes.
And I think too, this ties back to the knowing yourself, because while there might be discomfort or some feelings around disappointing someone or someone being upset or whatever else, if we're connected to our why, it still feels easier, or we can move through that more effectively than we're just arbitrarily being mean, because that's not the case, right? Like, I talk to people all day on a screen.
Yep.
I don't call anyone ever, because the last thing that sounds interesting to me is to get on another piece of technology to have to like make small talk or like keep a conversation going when I am required to do that for my job all day long. And so like, I won't even sometimes want to talk to my husband who's in the room after work. Like, I want to talk to nobody for a minute, right? Like, and he's right there, and it's easier for me, like, energetically to communicate in person than like through another device. So I think I have owned that there is a loss in, sometimes I do miss out on connections with friends and family farther away. Like, I'm not just like catching up. It's like a text is easier, or a meme on Instagram or something. So I like cut my losses there, but I have to know myself to know my bandwidth and what actually works for me, what I want to sign up for. Because if I felt bad and then just like called everyone after, I'm going to burn myself out. I'm going to feel resentful. I'm not going to be my best self. It's not actually energizing. And so I think when we're setting these boundaries, we're not being mean. We're not just being petty. We're not being arbitrary. It's really about helping people know and understand us through something that might be limiting or feel withholding, but it's actually a connection point so that I can really be my best self in the times that you have with me, or the access you have to me, right? But I have to know my limits and my boundaries, because no one's going to know them for me. I have to be the one to understand them, to then communicate them outward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that was a wonderful point. And, you know, we have to like you said, I got to know my boundaries, and then I can tell you and you and you and you what they are. And then now it's up to you to honor them, and you might not be perfect, and that's fine. I will tell you what they are again.
Yeah.
Sometimes, trying to. But yeah, we got to know ourselves before we can communicate.
Expect others to know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that point of like going back to it, because I think sometimes that's another mistake I've made, is like, but I told them my boundary. I told them one time, and I'm like,
10 years ago, they don't remember.
what world do I ever need to be told something one time? And like, yes, sometimes I can be told something once and, you know, and do it from then on. But like, that's not necessarily realistic. In someone else's world, your boundary about something isn't like
Right.
the be all end all, right? So I think just like, it all goes back to like remembering that people are not probably trying to like not withhold, like assuming best intent when you can, and then just like reminding or like refreshing or just circling back to that as a reminder. Oh, hey, as a reminder, like if I can answer, I will, and if I can't, I'll call you when I can, kind of thing. Because that's like another kind of misstep that I've made. It's like the setting of the boundary isn't like the final piece. It's really like the beginning. It's sort of like in the beginning journey of that, right? And then so it's like knowing yourself, then actually setting and communicating the boundary, and then it's like reminding people or continuing, like you said, Erin, to have like that consistency with, because like the second you then do answer every day your mom's call, now we've like backslidden, and now we have to like reset that expectation of that boundary again, right? So it's sort of like this linear thing. It's not like, okay, well, I've done that step, and so now that's it, and I'll never have to set that boundary again. And I think that's helpful to remember so that you don't get frustrated, because it can be easy to get frustrated when you feel like something you've communicated isn't getting met, but likely someone needs like several touches with that in order to like honor that moving forward, because it's not their priority, that's your priority.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And it's very, and I like to tell clients too, like, it's really normal for it to be this up and down thing because, like you're saying, Melissa, like, it's not on top of their mind what your boundary is. So it's going to take a couple times. It's going to take maybe a long time. I'll say, unfortunately, sometimes there are people in our life that just don't
care.
So it's
Yeah.
consistent, like every time type of situation. And there's always, like, if there is malice, if there is a safety issue, if there is somebody on that other end that's really harmful to your life and they're not listening to boundaries, then I think, there always is that option, like, hey, do we need a break from being associating with this person, or am I ready to, cut somebody off if I need to, or, but that is a very big deal, so that's a big conversation. But sometimes, safety reasons, we got to do what we got to do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say, sort of like switching out of the boundary piece, but more into just the connection with ourselves? Because I think that, again, like that's where it really starts. What might be some like tools or strategies or starting points to really owning and recognizing and being able to articulate like our authentic wants and needs, and like just showing up who we are, like by our own design, not by like what the script anyone else is trying to kind of write for us?
So there is, and Alicia, I don't know, do you use ACT in any of your, okay. So ACT is a type of therapy, it's acceptance and commitment therapy. Okay. All the ACT.
I know. I mean, that's the one I know, but there could be another one.
What? They're with ACT therapy, which is very like value-based, finding out what your values are, and then how can I live my life through these values. I love doing, and I can send you guys a link so you can post it. They have these value cards that are like a free PDF online, and there's a lot of them, and you kind of can make a list. There's with 3 columns: very important, and then not important, and then either you could physically cut up, make cards and put them each one, or you could just make a list or write it down. And I think that's a great first step for you to, and there, again, like this values list is pretty comprehensive. And just to see, okay, where did I put where? What is really, really important to me? Okay, family is important to me. Career is important to me. Having fun is really important to me. Maybe money is really important to me. They have a really big list, and there's things that are external values, internal values. And then that way you can start by, and then I think looking at the ones especially that are like, these are really, really important. Right. And then you can start to form how you want to be, how you want to act, what you're willing to do, put up with, and then the things that are not important, like I don't care about money, let's say.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not going to try to get a job as a CEO. That's fine.
Right.
And then if mom and dad bother me about doing this, I know like that's where I need to be like,
right.
Hey, we talked about this, yeah, like I'm not into that. So it helps kind of guide, I think, the process of figuring out where do I want to put my values and stances, and how do I want to move forward from there.
Yeah, I just did a workshop last night, and we did something similar where for Q3 I had everyone identify their top 3 priorities, and then look at their calendars, and are those things actually the most prominent on your calendar, or are other things taking up the space? Like what actually is being prioritized in your life through action, and how much do your priorities align with some of your values, right? And if your value is like health and wellness, but you have nowhere on your calendar a workout, good clean meals, water, a therapy appointment, then you're actually not living within your values. Your priorities are way over here, right? And I think the feedback was interesting because people were like, wow, I didn't realize how out of alignment I was until looking at it kind of through this lens. So I do think we can maybe know ourselves, but sometimes I think things get lost in translation, again, because we have so much other noise, other agendas, life is busy, but we don't realize how little we're actually utilizing or living through our values, or how much our priorities are not. We think like I prioritize these things, but then again, if I look at my actual calendar, that was from another really good book, Uptime by Laura Mae Martin. She's a CEO, or she's a coach for the CEOs of Google. Great book though, but she talks really about how you can only have one or two priorities, because then they're not priorities, and how like these really, like time is money kind of people are being efficient, and then how to like work backwards. She has some good tools, but that's one of the things she says, like look at your actual calendar and what's actually filling the spots of time, and then what needs to be negotiated. From what's like, where's that disconnect happening for ourselves?
Right.
So.
I love that.
And I'm like such a visual person. It's kind of scary. So I love that idea. And like with the cards too, it's just again like a super visual thing. Like looking at it and then being like, oh, like it's kind of similar. Oh,
Yeah.
I maybe a little bit live and do things and prioritize things based on that, but
Right.
Yeah.
stuff around.
I think that's why therapy is hard sometimes for people, because it is like it lives in like the theory and the theoretical and the feelings and the this. And I mean, we know that really good therapy does like transition into like practical tools, right? And like actually doing it. But if you don't make those moves and create those systems, it is all just like talk, and it actually doesn't translate into like ways you won't see as much growth or like sustainable growth if you don't do those things. That calendar trick is really good. I've actually heard of that too, and it's been a while, so now I'm kind of like, oh yikes! Like I don't know that my calendar right now like reflects. If you
Your
take
top
work out of
values.
it, right? Because work is like we have to do it to make money and to survive, right? But if I take my time that I'm not at work, I don't know. Now I like want to see what my calendar is telling me is my priority.
Yeah. Well, and even work though, like if money, success, prestige are not your top values, but you're working like 70-hour weeks. Now again, I get like we have to pay bills, but then maybe there's some misalignment there. Like why are you working so much? Like what is this
Totally.
about? Is it truly a necessity? Fine. Or is there actually something else in there? Like, why are you answering work emails at midnight? Like, if you don't care that much about that. Yeah. So I think it's just a helpful check-in, because it changes a lot,
I really want to do that. I think that's really, and that's like accessible. Like everyone can look at their calendar and like just do a quick stock of like what's what,
Yep. No, for sure. Well, I know we could keep going down all these fun rabbit trails that come out of this conversation, but what might be, Erin, a couple, like a little takeaway, last word of wisdom, something you want to kind of really nail in or leave folks with?
I think I would love to leave folks with just the idea of that your authentic self, your true self is beautiful, and it is who you are, and there may be people who maybe don't agree with it, or they don't, maybe values changed as you've gotten older, different life stages, what it may be, but you are you for a reason. You have your values for a reason. You have your likes and dislikes and needs for a reason. So to really listen to yourself, it's really, really easy to let the noise in. Full social media, work, environment. So to really listen to yourself and know that you're the best advocate for yourself. So within the boundary topic we were talking about this whole time, is boundaries are all just about advocating for yourself. So if you're not gonna do it, there's unfortunately no one else that's going to do it.
Right.
We'll end with one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite people, RuPaul Charles. He says, "If you can't love yourself, how the hell are you gonna love somebody else?" So we just gotta love ourselves first, and just know that what we're thinking and feeling is valid and supported.
Beautiful ending. I love that. Where can people find you? Is there anything you want to let folks know about that you're doing?
So you can find myself and Jillian and our other therapist, Lindsay, at RiseWellTherapy.com. Our Instagram is at RiseWell Therapy. Our Facebook's at RiseWell Therapy. And you can contact me. You can contact any of us there if you have any questions, if you're interested in therapy, if you're in the Chicago or if you're in Chicago or Illinois and California. Hit us up, and we love just working with anyone and everyone who are just going through it or need someone really safe to talk to. So yeah, you can check out our website or any of our socials.
Awesome. I'll make sure to have those links in the show notes, in the newsletter, wherever you're kind of tuning in from. Thank you again, Erin. It was so great to have you, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their day. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.